76. Socialism. Chalcedon Report Number 11, August 1st, 1966. The August 1966 Farm Journal has an important article entitled "The Wheat Shortage is Here" by Carl Hobson. Hobson begins by warning, "The world shortage of wheat that I warned about in Farm Journal 2.5 years ago is now here, and it will likely last a good many years. For 7 years, the world has been using more wheat than it has been raising. This has reduced world carryover stocks by more than a half. A year from now, these stocks will be small, and wheat prices will be still higher, unless the government uses price controls. The world production of wheat this year will be 6,000 million bushels less than the needed amount for world consumption. This is not a good year for wheat production. Drought is reducing output sharply in the US, North Africa, India, China and Australia. Poor seeding weather last fall held wheat acreage down in Europe. But this is not all. Other reports indicate the serious nature of the feed grain shortage. More feed grains are now being used to feed cattle than has been previously raised in 1 year. Thus, cattle production is faced with a food grain shortage and, with the drought, a hay and water shortage. Cattle are being sold heavily, oversold, because many ranchers are unable to carry them through the year. The drought in Australia is in its 5th year. The situation in China and Russia is very critical. Food is a major problem. But the nearly worldwide dry year and hot climatic conditions are not the cause. The crisis was coming already, and the hot, dry weather has only accentuated it. Hobson claims that the population explosion is the chief cause, but this is hardly the case. The population explosion is a myth. Russia has not had a population explosion, for example, but it is in serious trouble. The Ukraine was, in the days of the Tsars, the breadbasket of Europe. Today, it is producing poorly, and in some years has not fed itself. The real problem is socialism. The correlation between hunger and socialism has been very well traced by E. Parmalee Prentice in Hunger and History. In an earlier work, Farming for Famine, Prentice, in 1936, cited the 4 causes of famine. 1. The prevention of cultivation or the willful destruction of crops. 2. Defective agriculture caused by communistic control of land. 3. Governmental interference by regulation or taxation. 4. Currency restrictions, including debasing the coin. All of these add up to one thing: socialism. And the root of all socialism and communism is money management, a managed currency replacing the free coinage of gold and silver. Long ago, Montesquieu, in The Spirit of the Laws, Book 18, Chapter 3, wrote, "Countries are not cultivated in proportion to their fertility, but to their liberty." Today, as Barron's front-page story on The Third Horseman, December the 20th, 1965, stated, "Thanks to socialism, famine again stalks the earth. Like a horse and carriage, socialism and hunger inevitably go together." The picture is a grim one. Regardless of climate and soil, socialism throughout the world has yielded bitter fruit. Since 1961, when the Soviet Union suffered the first of a series of, quote, non-recurring, end quote, crop failures, wheat shipments from west to east have increased from 165 million bushels to 750 million. Mao's agrarian reformers have brought Red China to the brink of starvation. Much of Eastern Europe, once a granary in its own right, lives off United States surpluses, while the fertile farmlands of Algeria, which produced so bountifully for the hard-working colonists, have turned barren. Now the blight has spread to India. Starvation has already claimed its first victims. If present trends of population growth and farm output persist, concluded the USDA experts, India by 1970 will require fully one-half the US wheat crop to feed its teeming masses. The situation is now far worse than when these words were written last December, and it will get far, far worse before it ends. Repeatedly in history, socialists, as far back as Plato, have talked about birth control. The population explosion is an ancient excuse for socialist failure and a means of establishing total control over life, including birth itself. The persistent consequence of socialism has been depopulation. Depopulation by two central methods. First, there is depopulation by the socialist terror, by mass liquidation. Second, there is depopulation by famine. We have seen, are seeing, and shall see more of both. Will anything be done to prevent this? The answer is clearly no. Our humanistic education has geared our generation to think in terms of a revolutionary doctrine of love and to think well of all men. So it is impossible to shake the faith of the majority in the goodness of all men, and especially of our elite planners, the philosopher kings who will remake the world. A telling account of our spiritual idiocy and susceptibility to evil was analysed in the Review of the News, August 9th, 1966, pages 17 to 24. On July 13th, 1966, a criminal entered an apartment inhabited by 9 student nurses. Although he later displayed a revolver, he did not have it in his hand when he entered, nor when he tied up the girls one by one. 9 girls, screaming and clawing, could have routed him. The 4 Filipino nurses favoured ganging up on the intruder. They had time for a debate. But the American nurses favoured appeasement and won. They argued, maybe if we are quiet and calm, he will remain quiet and calm. We more or less have to trust him. Here, in brief, is the religion of love preached from our pulpits and the philosophy of appeasement practiced by our civil governments. As Review of the News commented, apparently, appeasement of criminals has now become a national characteristic of Americans, not only in dealing with the mass killers of international communism, but in dealing with criminals within our own society. The country has been so brainwashed, so conditioned to believe that all a criminal needs is a little love and understanding, that it has lost all sight of what the criminal mentality is all about. Our problems are an outgrowth of humanism. Humanism is a philosophy or perspective which is dominant in our day. According to the Dictionary of Philosophy, humanism is any view in which interest in human welfare is central. This is the basic definition, and humanitarianism is any view in which interest in human values are central. The Merriam-Webster International Dictionary, 2nd edition, defines humanitarian in full as follows. 1. Theological and Christian history. The distinctive tenet denying the divinity of Christ. Also, the system of doctrine based upon this view of Christ. 2. Ethics. A. The doctrine that man's obligations are limited to and dependent alone on man and human relations. B. The doctrine of Saint-Simon, that man's nature is perfectible through his own efforts, without divine grace. 3. Regard for the interests of mankind, benevolence. In all these definitions, one thing is obvious. Man is central. Man's welfare is the highest law and the only real law. Moreover, socialism, not only with Saint-Simon, is basically and essentially humanism applied to economics. Socialism denies economic laws. It plans to remake the world in terms of man's welfare, as seen by the planners. It is a government of men, not of laws. By men, not by law. And society is placed under man, not under God. A generation reared in humanism is bent on sacrificing law to suit the criminal, giving food to subsidize socialism, paying men not to work, appeasing criminals and communists, and on pouring out its pity on the degenerates. Listen to this. J. Edgar Hoover wrote in The Week magazine, August the 25th, 1957. Recently, many of you have joined me in my feeling of sympathy for the Detroit father whose 6-year-old daughter was brutally slain by a sex pervert. This bereaved father said, "I can't blame the man as much as the society that produced him. It's a society that allows its young people to read and distribute the worst sort of pornography. Let's wipe out this schoolyard sex racket." With all due respect to Mr. Hoover for his great services to all Americans, he is here dead wrong. I have no sympathy for this father. He was as degenerate as that pervert. Instead of righteous indignation against a criminal who, according to God's law, deserved to die, he said, "I can't blame the man as much as the society which produced him." This is simply environmentalism, economic determinism, Marxism, humanism. Man is not to blame. His world must be remade to remake man. How can we defeat Marxism when fathers are so degenerate, and when the chief agent of anti-communism for the United States of America expresses sympathy for such a perspective? We are far gone indeed. Will people ever wake up? Yes, when famine and death, economic collapse and anarchy, and the triumph of criminal anarchy drain every drop of stupid humanism and pity for evildoers out of their veins, and only when they stand in terms of a world under God's law, for the rule of justice, not sentimentality. Don't expect miracles, unless you believe in God. And if you believe in God, don't offend him by expecting him to bail out the very people who despise him and war against his law and order. Ye that love the Lord, hate evil. Psalm 97, verse 10. More serious than the wheat shortage is the shortage of true faith. But because the world is under God's law, the coming and growing economic crisis is a judgment upon world socialism and also its destruction.